and then got
Yeah.
kicked out of the house for wanting to wash my own laundry, which I have been doing since I was like 6 years old.
Yes.
And got kicked out of the house, was working at a factory, was going to Kent State University full time, midnight shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.,
Yep.
7 days a week. Couldn't stay awake in class, so I got kicked out. My uncle comes up to me and says, "Hey, you are going absolutely nowhere. You're drunk every day. You're going into the military."
His name is Russ. He bought that mic, and now he's got a podcast show.
I was adopted somewhere outside of Youngstown, Ohio. I was adopted into this name, and I think it's because I lost the spelling bee in second grade when they gave me this name to spell, and I got stuck with it. So, but my dad, adopted dad, is a contractor. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and the reason I was adopted was in 1970 they had gotten pregnant, and she lost the baby because she had Crohn's disease. Back then they would immediately start hacking out parts of your body. So she couldn't have kids. 1979, I was born. So yes, I'm old. Not as old as Russ, but I'm old. But
Close.
not too far away. However, I was adopted, and I am Greek, Italian, and Arabic born or adopted into a blonde-haired, blue-eyed family. So that was really strange, and it actually echoed in life growing up. I'd be called out for not one of these things, not like
Strange in what way?
right. If as soon as I step out in the sun, I turn about 6 shades darker. I am obviously not blonde-haired, blue-eyed, far from. And back when I actually had hair, before I had children and it all fell out, it was extremely thick, black, and curly, wavy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an interesting dichotomy there within the family. Dad's a contractor, owned multiple rentals growing up, so I got to know the rental game from that standpoint. And now, Russ, you can understand how crazy this would be. The
Yeah.
tenants knew where we lived because they drove their rent checks to our house. When they were pissed off, they drove to our house.
Right.
Back in the time of beepers, if one of them showed up pounding on the door all pissed off, we would have to call Dad's beeper from the landline and dial 911 into the beeper.
Yeah.
So that was life.
So how many rentals did he have?
I want to say 35 or so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
His first one, so, everybody's all about the house hacking. His first one was a duplex. He and my mom moved into this duplex that he bought and rented out the other side. It's crazy because he bought all these things on seller finance, never taught me about seller finance at all. I just naturally got into it. And then later, oh yeah, that's what I did. And I'm like, why the hell didn't you teach me this when I was a kid?
Right.
So, but he didn't want me in the business. He never thought I was smart enough or good enough or anything else, which will play into the story later on as we go along. I remember about 13, 14, 15 years old, I would actually take his truck because back then, as long as you were driving relatively safe, the cops didn't care, especially in small town East Ohio.
License is really not that big a deal.
Not really. If I throw a ladder in the back of the truck, a mower in the back of the truck, stuff like that, and I would go and mow lawns and paint houses, stuff like that as a kid. And since mom was always sick, I would always, people are like, what, well, do you root for Ohio State? Stuff like that. Mom, I've never really watched football. I never had time. I was always on the job site because mom was always sick, so I was either at family's house or I was on the job site building houses.
So you're saying your mom was always sick?
Always sick because of Crohn's disease.
Okay.
Yep. So she spent, growing up, we were probably told she was going to die no less than a dozen times.
Wow.
That she was not going to make it home. So, you grew up with that, and, me being me, and, Russ, how hard-headed, not only hard-headed can I be, but how hot my temper burns.
Yes.
I was that poster child for being shoved out the door and the door's locked and don't come in until the sun comes down.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think they cared if I was broken and bleeding. You're still staying outside. Get some duct tape. But no, it wasn't that bad. But no, I was growing up in that environment, you really become independent very, very quickly. And, I was always just, I don't know, just making money and hustling and stuff like that. Just because that's what everybody else was doing. You know, my dad's was born in 1950. His family was, you know, from that era.
Yes.
I remember we used to call my grandpa Oppo. He's Slovak or was Slovak. Sorry. I remember borrowing his coat because you know mom had to be rushed to the ER and then was there for a couple of weeks or something like that. It's wintertime. Dad's like, all right, you got to go to Oppo and grandma's, and I didn't bring my coat, so Oppo gave me his coat, and I'd shove my hand in the pockets, and I would find rolls of 20s.
Oh,
All over.
okay.
There had to have been $3,000-$4,000 in this jacket. But that was Oppo's era. You know, he grew up around, you know, the Great Depression and everything else.
Yeah.
So my dad was a product of that. Never had debt, if he could help it. You know, so I grew up always hustling, always afraid of debt, which later on, funny story about that little side. I do these little tangents here and there, but
Yep.
I had a
Sure.
girlfriend that was like, hey, you know, you don't have to pay your credit card off right away, and that
Right.
actually got me in a lot of freaking trouble.
Yeah, that's
Anyways,
trouble.
exactly. So fast forward, found out mom ended up with leukemia when I was 16, and then I will tell you a huge regret in my life. I don't have very many, but we got into an argument. I went to bed, and when I woke up the next morning, I found out she had passed out, and Dad rushed her to the hospital. She died 4 days later. Never got to say sorry. Said a whole lot of shit in anger that,
Yeah.
tell you what, to this day I will cry my eyes out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was 17
Okay.
when I lost her, and on tax day, coincidentally, she died on tax day. But then Dad got married real quick to somebody not much older than me, which really went well. And then got
Yeah.
kicked out of the house for wanting to wash my own laundry, which I have been doing since I was like 6 years old.
Yes.
And got kicked out of the house. Was working at a factory. Was going to Kent State University full time. Midnight shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Yep.
7 days a week. I couldn't stay awake in class, so I got kicked out. My uncle comes up to me and says, hey, you are going absolutely nowhere. You're drunk every day. You're going into the military, but you're going into the Coast Guard because they don't go to war. So,
Going into Coast Guard because why?
because they don't go to war,
Oh, they
which
don't go to war.
is not
Ah,
true. Is not
okay.
true
How'd
at
that
all.
work out?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah. So you're working a factory job, dropped out of college,
yep. No,
drunk,
kicked out of
drunk,
college. Not dropped out. Kicked out.
yeah, kicked out of
Big difference.
college, drunk every
The,
day. And your
yep.
uncle says, you're going in the Coast Guard because they don't go to war.
Yes.
Got it.
And
Okay.
and so I go to you know, I go to boot camp in March of 2001. We all know
Yes.
what happens in later on in 2001.
Yeah, there was a situation, wasn't there?
Yep. And I was on the ship, and it was crazy. So my first duty station was a buoy tender in Port Huron, Michigan. I hate the cold. By the way, a little backstory to that: I used to drive in truck when I was 13, snow plowing. I still hated it. Those old Dodge trucks, 1970 trucks, the Dodge trucks could heat up
Yeah.
like nobody's business.
Oh yeah.
So you could boil coffee off the heater. But the ship was broke down. We couldn't go anywhere. The ship was
Hmm.
built in 1944. Was bombed at Bikini Atoll with nuclear weapons to test the effects of nuclear weapons on surface ships.
Wow.
So I'm pretty sure I glowed in the dark for a little bit. But it was broke down. We were stuck at the dock, and then they would put a chain across the buoy deck, said, you can't leave. And it's like, this is stupid. They're like, yeah, if we get a bomb threat, we got to sail out in the middle of Lake Huron so it doesn't hurt anybody else. I'm like, I'm swimming home. Are you kidding me? Aside from that, the ship's not going anywhere. It's broke. And so it was a very long, I don't know, 10 days, I want to say we were stuck, and our girlfriends would come down, and they couldn't come onto the pier itself. So they'd sit on the hill and just wave at us. I'm like, this is just stupid. And then the Coast Guard goes to Homeland Security from
Yes.
it used to be
Right.
Department
Right.
of Transportation. We went to Homeland Security, and was actually the largest budget in Homeland Security. We got to do some fun stuff, like flying out in helicopters, dropping down onto ships because somebody's name pinged the computer in Homeland Security. They weren't supposed to be in our country. So
Right.
we'd have to go find them on the ship and detain them. and stuff like that.
So
That
is the Coast, I know it's military, but
yeah,
I've also heard it described as law enforcement too.
yes, that's why it's Homeland Security. It's can actually bridge that divide.
Got it.
So we could
Yeah,
actually do operations on U.S. soil.
gotcha. Okay.
Yep, such as when I got restationed to Michigan again, because the wife at the time was pregnant.
Yes.
I was doing like drunken boaters type stuff. That's why we could do those acts. So, but back when I was in Texas, you know, you'd have instances where you'd find somebody, have to detain them because we found some actually legitimate bad guys that, you know, while they're crucifying President Bush for all the stuff that was going on, which I'm not defending the guy by any stretch of the imagination. We did actually find some legitimate bad guys that should not be in our country at all.
So you were in Port Huron, Michigan,
Yep. Then Port Arthur,
and
Texas.
Port Arthur, Texas. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Right.
Outside of Beaumont, which is
Got it.
kind of a
Got it.
suburb of Houston, I guess.
Beaumont's a rough town. I've only spent 2 nights in Beaumont, and it was scary.
Double that, and you'll get Port Arthur.
Okay. Who were the bad guys?
The most of them were coming from either like Nigeria or Sudan. We had some people from, I'm trying to think of some of those other Middle Eastern countries that they weren't supposed to be even coming to our country at all. But yeah, I mean, just different people that had terrorist associations.
Really?
Stuff like that.
So was this before 9/11 or after?
After.
After. Okay.
After. Yep.
After 9/11. Got it.
Yep.
That makes sense. So then you're on the hunt for the bad guys.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And I mean, and to be honest, if I would have stuck doing just that, I would have actually been really, really happy.
Right.
Because I started falling into more of an instructor role towards the end of it, which I really loved. I really enjoyed doing that.
Went to a bar, refused to shine, didn't buy